Do you want to learn more on how to put money to work in regenerative food and agriculture? Follow our video course via investinginregenerativeagriculture.com/course or in the links below. Now, on to the podcast. We're going to listen to an interview with Michiel de Man, Strategy Director at Commonland. And we're going to talk about many different things in this interview, ranging from how impact investors can get involved, what the difficulties are and how we could maybe overcome them. We're going to talk about regenerative almonds and how to work with many farmers in one of the driest regions in Spain. And we're going to look into the full return model, which is the cornerstone model of Commonland. Enjoy! Welcome to another episode of Investing in Regenerative Agriculture, Investing as if the planet mattered. A podcast show where I talk to the pioneers in the regenerative food and agriculture space to learn more on how to put our money to work to regenerate soil, people, local communities and ecosystems while making an appropriate and fair return. Why my focus on soil and regeneration? Because so many of the pressing issues we face today have their roots in how we treat our land, grow our food and what we eat. And it's time that we as investors, big and small, and consumers start paying much more attention to the dirt/soil underneath our feet. Before we get started, I've been recording these interviews next to my day job, and I will definitely continue to do so and release about an episode a month. But at the same time, I would love to take this further, share more interviews. There are many more stories to share on investing in regenerative food and agriculture. More depth, improve the quality, maybe even doing some video series. So I started a Patreon community, which makes it easy to support creators like myself. If these podcasts have been of value to you, and if you have the means, I invite you to support me and make this happen. For more information, please find the link to my Patreon account in the description below. And now, without further ado, the interview. Enjoy! Welcome to Investing in Regenerative Agriculture, Agriculture as if the planet mattered. I'm Koen van Seijen, the host of today. In the podcast today, I'm talking to Michiel de Man, Strategy Director of Commonland. Commonland is one of the leading organizations working on business cases to restore landscapes. Welcome, Michiel.
Thank you, Koen. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, to start with a personal question, why are you doing what you're doing?
I guess this started when I graduated at high school. I moved to Australia for a year and traveled around, had a lot of fun. And I continued traveling for another year in Europe. And what struck me was that everywhere we came in those old VW vans, we saw either nature, because we spend a lot of time in nature, or in economically developed areas, so to speak, where nature had gone. And we basically saw, in many cases, a lot of destruction. And the question arose then already in me, why is economic development always going at the cost of our natural environment, and can't we find other ways? And that sort of determined my career, I guess. For that reason, I've always tried to focus on, the business world at the one side, understanding how business works and what are its impacts on people and on the planet. But especially also, can we find ways to do business that, instead of further trashing the planet, actively contribute to restoring it? And that's been basically my quest in my career, and that's also has led me about 4 years back to together with Willem Verweda, establish what has now become Commonland. Commonland basically believes that we need to develop a large-scale landscape restoration industry, and we actually don't see an alternative to counter the crisis of biodiversity loss, of losing soils worldwide, of water stress, but also climate change, and not to even mention the food security questions. We don't see there's any other way than by restoring land, both on productive lands, so farms, and also of ecological zones. And that sort of has been the basis of the model we've developed, and also the projects that we have developed over the last couple of years. Projects that, promote large-scale land restoration and large-scale regenerative agriculture. We really see that the only way to do that is by actively involving the private sector. And also, another really important ingredient is to do this on a long term. So, next quarter profits, they won't make this happen. We really try and have a long-term vision, a 20-year vision, actually, and that sort of scares off some people. But it's very attractive to others. For instance, we are seeing that many family offices, people who think cross-generationally, are really interested in this. And I think also those are probably the people who are, going to actually contribute to this development of large-scale restoration and regenerative agriculture. So the model that what we have been developing over the last couple of years, not only conceptually but especially in projects, making it happen, has been the 4 returns, 3 zones, 20-year model. The 4 returns, and I'm sure you've probably seen that we've talked about this before, Koen. In our view, it starts with inspiration. It starts with, finding motivated farmers and land managers to do things differently on their land. To actively start restoring soils, to change the way of production. But the crux is to make it fun, to make it inspiring, to touch people's hearts. And it's not us who do that. It's those people in the field that are already convinced. And what we do is we connect them to others. And that, our mobilization is a very important part of our project. And it starts with inspiration. The second thing, of course, is, the social capital, what we call, jobs. People wanting to work together. We think that's paramount. There's no way we can restore the planet without, getting the people actively involved and making a buck out of it. And obviously the natural impacts are a result of that. So if we are able to restore the soil, biodiversity, and water, that's obviously key. I think in the end, our whole economy depends on that. Well, and if you do all of that well, so if you create restoration that's based on, meaningful activities on agricultural lands, people making money, that can also provide that an investment case and in financial returns. And for that model, so the 4 returns model, that was the concept that Willem basically developed 4 years back, and since then has been at the basis of 4 projects that we have developed now, and increasingly we see other organizations adapting it, and there's a lot of interest in applying it. I think it's probably because it's quite simple to use. Basically, the 3P model, people, planet, profit. But I think the inspirational aspect to it is what matters most. At least it makes me still wanting to do this work every day.
And when you look at the projects and the practical level, can you dive a bit deeper into the ones you've been working on for the last few years, and maybe pick out one example to really explain how these 4 returns model work in practice?
So I've been personally involved most in our Spanish project. We have developed or helped develop projects in Australia, South Africa, Spain, and the Netherlands. Last year I've been very deeply involved in our Spanish project. It's great fun to travel to have an excuse to travel south every now and then. What we've done here, and then I'm talking about the Altiplano region north of Granada. We have basically identified a small group of front-runner farmers who are in the almond business, almond production. And what we saw there's among this group, there were people really good at composting, other people were really good at integrated pest management, others were really good at sophisticated green infrastructures to save more water. This is a very desert area, very degraded area. Almost no soils anymore, about 300 millimeters of rainfall per year. So all of these things are really important ingredients of what we would call regenerative agriculture. Now, and we found people doing parts of that. And what we started to see was that, well, these people, they are doing great stuff, but no one knows about it, and they don't even know each other. So we started to connect them to each other. and that group of frontrunners quickly grew up to about 20 people and 40 people. And then we started to, do a process with them to develop a long-term vision. As I said, we have a 20-year horizon. And what we did with this group was say, well, if you look deep in your heart and you look into the future, so if we think about this same place, this trashed, semi-arid steppe area, highly degraded, people have moved to the cities, almost no young people there anymore. How would you see this evolve over the next 20 years? And what can we do to make that happen as a second step? And out of that process, what we call a U-curve process, it's a methodology that has been developed by Otto Scharmer at the MIT. And that's been a super powerful thing. And that basically created the basis for our project. And the vision was really inspiring, actually. It's, the people, together came up with this future version of this territory that was green, where young people have jobs that are sustainable. Regenerative agriculture has become the norm. There is marketing going on of high quality products that actively restore the landscape. All of the, there's great interconnectivity with the cities. It's high tech and low tech combined. There's respect. All those sort of these things came out of this, and that has sort of been leading of the whole process since then. I think this mobilization effort has been really important for the success so far of the project. And out of this shared vision, we basically, together with these Andalusian farmers, developed a plan for just activities. What are we going to do? So we are going to promote regenerative farming. We are going to develop businesses that have a positive impact on nature and on people. We're going to restore degraded natural areas. We're going to communicate about this. We're going to have inspirational workshops and all that sort of stuff. And we started doing it. And the great thing was that our job was basically that of a catalyst. So we helped this emerge out of the local initiative, and we sort of helped channel some of the energies. And for instance, there was one farmer, he started to organize composting workshops. And those composting workshops, they were tremendously popular because, composting is a thing that directly activates your soil. Soil becomes fertile again. It's cheap to do. It's not that complicated. And you get financial returns within a year because, it really can boost your productivity. Now, so we saw more and more of those initiatives emerging. Basically what we did was just, making sure that people were informed about this and connected to it and get out of the way. And since then, several business cases have emerged. Last year we started a company which is a marketing company for regeneratively produced almonds. So the 20 farmers have committed to produce for this company and increasingly apply regenerative practices. These include composting, erosion control, water harvesting via green infrastructures like swales. They're doing windbreaks, all that sort of things, of course, based on a planning for their farms. So that's what the farmers committed to. And we established basically a marketing company to also get a better return on this produce. And we think that this year, we hope to create the proof in the market that it's actually possible to not only, restore your land productively, but also to create better commercial returns on these regeneratively produced rain-fed almonds. So we'll be at several trade shows this year to promote the project, to promote the product. Well, that's just one example. The company is called La Almendresa. I won't get into too much detail now why that name was chosen, but at least it represents basically an integrated form of production where you also not only apply these regenerative practices, but also you try and integrate with other productive crops like aromatics and honey that you can all do at the same place, and that sort of reinforce the ecological functionality of the system. And basically, so this is one of the business cases that we helped establish. And so far so good. I think a lot has happened over the last years, and we really think that this has the potential to take off in the upcoming period.
And that sounds great. And if you look at, this is a very specific project you have been working on. In the last year, what has changed at Commonland? I think after probably COP21, there's, at least I've seen, a lot more interest in soil and the role it plays in society and energy and CO2 and water management, etc. Have you seen a lot of increased interest, and how, if so, how did that change Commonland and the structures you've been working on and partners, etc.?
We're obviously super happy with the developments in the international climate arena. Well, not the very recent one, obviously, but the COP meetings. I think it's a very important step. I think it's we are moving out of a niche towards large scale appreciation of the importance of this topic, and we definitely notice this in our field as well. We're also seeing that, well, for Commonland, nothing much changes as a result of that. We're sort of an impact company and impact foundation, basically, and we will do this regardless of international policy developments, because we think it's needed. At the same time, it definitely helps with the sort of overall consideration for not only climate issues, but also the need for integrated approaches, like regenerative agriculture. I think is probably the most important way to capture large quantities of carbon, saving biodiversity, saving soils, fixing our food problems. So that's really key. But what we are not really seeing is how it's translating, so these policy developments into actual support for the type of activities that we're developing. So what we're seeing is there is still a big gap between the large committed allocations of the hundreds of millions of euros and dollars that have sort of been allocated to tackle the climate change problem, and activity in the field. We still see there's a big gap. There's many investment funds being established that don't reach the initiatives that are there because they are simply not bankable enough. So there's sort of still a missing link. And of course, what we try to do is to make the non-bankable initiatives bankable. But to do that, you would need seed capital or things like that, and we are not seeing that link is being made at a scale large enough. I think we really need many more organizations to fill that gap, and also the right types of money to make those small initiatives typically, but have potential to make them bankable. That's my perception of the markets, but it may well be that there's initiatives that I'm missing, but I sort of see that as a big commitment, big money, and small initiatives, but lack of small initiatives that can reach scale as a result of partially as a result of lacking of finance.
And when you look at, because I completely agree, I think there's a lot of money floating or flooding into the space. I mean, not flooding in terms of water, but flooding into the space, looking for places to get to work, and it turns out to be incredibly difficult to put money to work in the regenerative agriculture space. A lot of times they're too small, too hidden, not bankable yet, not coordinated enough, not connected to the market. So there are many great small pockets of examples, but not too many that reach up high enough to reach the financing. What if you would look a year from now and you had a magic wand? What would you do to change that?
That's a good one. Well, I think I would probably keep doing what we do. That sounds strange, but I really think that the solution that we are trying to create makes sense, right? And the solution, from my point of view, is or part of it is at least, and that's also what we're good at, I think, is to create the projects that are able to, within time, absorb bigger finance. Not because that's the goal per se, but it's because it's a requirement in order to create impact at scale. So we started with, as I refer back to the project I just explained a bit in Spain, we started with a handful of committed farmers, and where we're trying to move to is to a selection of bankable business cases that are ready to not necessarily absorb a lot of external finance. That could be one of the goals, but at least that are solid business that can become solid businesses that are financed with a variety of sources, right? And we think it's showing that it's possible to basically restore land based on business cases for everybody involved. That's probably, I think that still is the most important role that we foresee, at least for the project side of Commonland. But I think it's really important that for people at the investor side realize this, that it's not always sufficient to wait until bankable cases emerge. I think if you want to create impact, it could make a lot of sense to also look into the pre-commercial side of business development. So, for instance, last year, the almond company that we helped establish, it wasn't there. We hired a guy who knows a lot about almond marketing and is a great biodynamic farmer. So he knows enough about the commercial side and the production side to do this well. And we paid him to, together with the farmers, create a business model and a business plan. And that business plan, when that was finished, it took about half a year to really do that properly. Based on that, the farmers actually asked him to establish this company with them. Now, when the company was established, all the farmers, they were so committed, they put in their own cash and their own almonds to get through the first year. So that shows the commitment of these guys.
Basically not having a necessity for outside funding.
No, so they didn't have a necessity for outside funding. And our impact investment basically has been that, we paid a few bucks to develop this business plan and to find the right guy to manage the project, to manage the business. And we're now not even part of it, aside from a sort of more strategic sparring role. And so I don't know if this is a good message for impact investors, but perhaps if impact is more important than investment, these are definitely opportunities to look into.
Yeah, the impact is potentially enormous. And I think that we, from the impact investing space, have to figure out alternative ways of putting money to work and together with, in this case, local farmers and together in structures that make sense for all stakeholders and not just for the investor. So that's a challenge and an opportunity, because at the same time with some investments, a lot of these companies could grow maybe slightly faster or have a bigger impact or do more things than they do because it still costs money. But if it's locally available, the resources to start, there's no obvious need for outside investments of any case or sort.
Well, yeah, I think that could be, I think that's partly true. At the same time, I don't want to disencourage anyone. I think in this case, we, as Commonland, we acted basically as a business development support. So you could see this initiative more as sort of an incubator environment that we created, right, to help this company, start and become present in the market. We can also still participate in it. So actually, the other members of the company would probably appreciate that, and that would obviously provide an investment opportunity for us. So it's not an either or, but I do think that what I would like to raise the attention to is that it's not, if you want to create impact, maybe the pre-commercial side of business development is sometimes, it's often neglected as an important place to create a lot of impact with not too much risk. The risk is very high, but the overall investments are typically low.
And then you create opportunities to later on in hybrid structures, etc., still participate in the businesses you helped create, obviously.
Yeah, and exactly because, especially in this agricultural field where there's not much density of investment, right? So there's not much innovation. Like this company is very innovative, so to speak, for the Andalusian reference, right? It's there's not much happening there, which provides great opportunity. I think if you are slightly better at marketing than everybody else, and well, in marketing is not a very strongly developed capacity within most agricultural businesses. If you move it, there's not many producers who know anything about consumers, for instance. Well, if you have a company that understands consumers and knows about farmers, you can combine the two. Well, there's it's sort of a pond where there's not many other people fishing, right? So you can create an advantage of being in that place, and I think that's what we try to do at Commonland as well, to create opportunity, because it's very different if you are in Silicon Valley, where you're competing to the next big. Everyone around you is doing more or less the same, or if you're in rural Spain, where basically nothing's happening still, aside from big conglomerates and slow-moving companies.
Yeah, it's all about the context and the relativity of your competitors, and if you look, just to switch the conversation a bit to what have you been working on and what has kept you busy and maybe even up at night in the last few months, and what is or will keep you busy in the next few months, just to give a bit of an idea of what you are working on and Commonland is busy with in this period.
Well, I tend to sleep well still. I've recently moved out of the crying babies period of my life, and sort of now the U.S. government things that are keeping me awake sometimes, but I'm sort of trying to neglect them. Of course, with the establishing these new companies in the different projects is there's always a lot of things going on, so it keeps us busy. Aside from the marketing company for regenerative production that are being established in the different projects at the same time, basically. So in Australia, South Africa, and Spain, we are developing, more or less similar concepts. In Australia, the Australian concept, wide open agriculture, is much bigger than what we're doing in Spain currently. Probably that's going to have an IPO this year, so we're quite stoked about that. In South Africa, we have established an aromatics company that allows farmers to set aside large pieces of their land for restoration. We're very happy that that's also materializing. I think it's a great achievement. Also here we're talking about a very remote area with a number of farmers who have never been in that business before, so it's a big transition. It's great to see that's happening. So those things, they're not keeping me awake, but they are very, they're great to be part of, basically. And especially to see, well, with all the difficulties that we face, that it is possible to make this happen. Aside from that, we have recently established an impact consultancy company, which is called For Returns Partners, with the aim to support companies who want to do something with landscape restoration and with regenerative agriculture. As an example, last year we have established projects with Heineken, also in Spain. It's I'm not sure if I can tell that I can say that name, but there's other brands, of course, like Carlsberg and stuff. But anyway, this beer brewery in southern Spain, they wanted us to help them with balancing their water use via landscape restoration activities, and regenerative agriculture was part of that. And so we helped them with developing 4 restoration projects for each of their breweries in Spain. And so that shows that there is increasing interest of big brands also to be involved in regenerative agriculture. And that's and sometimes it's really you can't really predict where that interest is, but it is there. And we thought, well, why not establish a company that sort of caters for that need? So those companies who want to do something with this, let's help them with connecting to the right right partners, developing the right projects, or tying into existing initiatives that they don't know about, and sort of advise them on that. And that's basically what we're doing there. And currently that's going quite well. So we are at this stage connecting with dredging companies that want to create more added value for their dredging activities, quite interesting. I never thought of this opportunity, but it's, of course, they move around a lot of soil. And what do you do with the soil after moving it around? Well, what are the value creation, potential value creating activities that you can do with that? And of course, there, regenerative agriculture is an important opportunity. We're also looking into the palm oil sector. We're looking at large-scale agricultural planning activities in Brazil. So, all of these are all leads at this stage, but we think that we can develop increasing number of projects over the next couple of years. So I'm sure that that's something that will keep us busy for the upcoming period as well.
Yeah, it sounds extremely interesting, and I'll be sure to be checking in and to get more updates on those projects as well.
Yeah, man, we talk with each other more often. There's a lot happening, and I think you have a lot of interesting references as well. I mean,
I'm trying to get them to do interviews also. That's definitely to open source that. So I want to thank you for that, and also be conscious of time. And I'm sure we'll be checking in more often on the different projects and go deeper into that. And I want to thank you for your time, your openness, and the willingness to share the work of Commonland.
Well, most welcome. I hope this has been useful, and more than glad for anyone to share more experiences. It's been exciting, and thanks so much for setting this up. I think it's you're right on the right spot, I think, with this, and I really look forward to hearing additional items in this same series.
You just listened to an interview, Investing in Regenerative Agriculture, Agriculture as if the Planet Mattered. An interview with Michiel de Man, Strategy Director at Commonland. We talked about almonds, about marketing, about farmers, very dry areas in Spain, and how we can put money to work to change that. I hope you join us again soon for more of these interviews. If you found the Investing in Regenerative Agriculture and Food podcast valuable, there are a few simple ways you can use to support it. Number 1, rate and review the podcast on your podcast app. That's the best way for other listeners to find the podcast, and it only takes a few seconds. Number 2, share this podcast on social media or email it to your friends and colleagues. Number 3, if this podcast has been of value to you, and if you have the means, please join my Patreon community to help grow this platform and allow me to take it further. You can find all the details on patreon.com/regenerative agriculture or in the description below. Thank you so much, and see you at the next podcast. Dear friends of the podcast, I'm super excited to share with you the online video course Investing in Regenerative Agriculture and Food. How to put money to work in regenerating soils at scale and growing a lot of tasty food while doing it. Why are we doing this course? After 100 interviews and more than 100 hours of audio asking the question how to put money to work in regenerating soils, and have been following the space since 2011 and recording these podcasts since 2016, we thought it was time to share our lessons learned. What have we seen in the space over the last years? How have we built our decision-making framework? What to focus on with the podcast? How have we picked interviewees? What questions should you ask? What is happening in the space? What should you read? What should you listen? What should you watch? How to approach this space? For whom is this course? You, the soil builders and investors in this space. The soil builders, people working in this space, entrepreneurial farmers, fund managers, vehicle builders, crowd investing, platform builders, agtech companies, farm-to-gut food companies, permaculture, key line designers, holistic management consultants, etc., etc. People that are building soil at scale. And the investors who are putting their own money to work through their family office or as private individuals, or people who are putting other people's money to work through foundations, institutional capital, banks, insurance companies, etc. Is this course free? No. This is pay what you think it's worth. Meaning, I have no way of knowing what this course will be worth to you. And I'm very aware that among the listeners of this podcast, we have people with very different means. So I'm inviting you, if this course is creating value to you, and if you have the means, to consider paying what you think it's worth. Thank you. So what is this course? It's currently a series of 17 videos, mostly ranging from 10 to 15 minutes, plus PDF slides, so you don't have to ride along. We're going to look into why invest in regenerative agriculture and why extractive agriculture is so risky, how to invest, what kind of frameworks you could and I think should build, what to invest in, what kind of co-investors you could find, or what kind of investors you could find if you're a soy builder. Every lesson will have a digging deeper part where I will share what kind of reports, what kind of interviews, what kind of videos you can look into if you want to dig deeper. We're going to look at nutrient density, landscape design, and a lot more. So what is it not? It's not a list of investable deals. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist in this world. We're really at the beginning of the regenerative agriculture and food revolution. It's also not investment advice. Before making any investment, please find professional investment advice. So get ready, get a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, or whatever you're drinking. Click on the link below, sign up, and I'm really looking forward to your feedback.